Welcome! In this video I'll show you how I painted my Dreadnought to this level, using a wide array of easy to follow techniques. To make it easier to base coat every nook and cranny, I began working on the model in sub-assemblies. Once I have the bases applied, I could build it up and focus the details on the parts that are actually exposed to the eye. As usual, I began with the messy step first. The Dreadnought has a lot of open space on its panels, so to make them less flat, I stipple paint with a sponge to create texture on them. Building up the red over black would take forever, so I began with a coat of reddish brown, followed by 2 coats of a dark red. As well as helping us build up the red, the previous brownish color will still remain on some spots here and there, because of the randomness of the sponge, providing a more interesting result in the end. As you can see, I'm hitting many details as well as metallic parts. That is why when using this technique we have to do it as a first step. To finish, I continued with a lighter, more vivid red. I applied 2 to 3 coats, until I had built up the color properly. Both red coats were diluted in equal amounts with water to avoid big jumps in color, and slowly build up the transition. Here is a comparison of both reds after being applied, and from up close you can see all those layers coming together to create a more weathered look. Next came the most boring step, which was to base coat all the metallics. Having the model assembled for this step made it much easier to not miss any spots. Still, once done I had a look around to make sure I was not missing out anything. After, I gave all the metallics a quick dry brush to create some subtle highlights, before moving on to washing it all with black. I used oils for this, but you can use whatever wash type you like. We are just establishing the base color of the metallic so that we have all base coats and shadows covered before gluing up the model. At this point, the model could be ready just by painting up the remaining details. The panels have an interesting weathered look with a lot of variety, so they don't look flat at all. Also, by working in sub-assemblies, we made sure to comfortably base coat all the interior metallics, and just with a base coat, dry brush and a wash, they are looking quite decent. However, as this was a centerpiece model of the army, I wanted to add a bit more to it. Let us add some rust to the metallics. I'm using a brown, red brown and orange acrylic. I diluted them all, 3 parts water to 1 part paint. The first step was to apply the brown wash on some but not all the recesses. I chose the parts where I imagined the most rust would build up. Because of how much the paint is diluted, this will be very subtle once dry. I followed it up with another coat, but over all the surface. This will enhance the previously chosen areas and give a subtle hint of oldness to the machinery overall. Once dry, 1 coat of diluted red-brown was applied just like the first coat of brown, where I focused on the spots where most rust would build up. The same was done after with the orange. Once dry, we get a rusty look which will add up more detail to the metallics when looked at from up close. Next, disaster struck. I always say that in order to improve, you have to try out new things. So me, finally having the chance to paint a vehicle, wanted to try out oil dot filtering. Basically, we have a brush to apply the oil and another one to blend it. Usually this technique is used on airbrush models to kill that airbrush artificial look. Yet I had already achieved an interesting look with the stippling, but wanted to try the technique out. The idea is to go up and down to create streaks as well as color variety. For the first application, I went extremely heavy with the oils, plus the red one was actually a high grade one, which overpowered the others. By the time I was done blending, I had covered up everything I worked up before. Luckily, I was able to clean this up and try again. The second try went much better, only using the brown and magenta colors, and I had created some streaking which added up to the overall look. I also wetted my brush with some solvent, but removed the excess as I was supposed to do, but thought it wouldn't matter. Yet it actually did. What I want to get at by showing you this is not an explanation on the technique itself, since I actually failed at it, but that it is okay to try new things, even when working on important models like this centerpiece. I ended up using some solvent to clean up some patches of oil, to reveal the texture underneath, which provided me with more variety in the end. Moving on to something I actually know how to do, let's do some panel lining. I diluted the dark brown acrylic for this, 2 parts paint to 1 part water. You can help the paint flow better into the recesses by wetting the surface first. I actually did a video focused on this technique, which I'll link above if you want to see its magic at work. Due to the oil paint I applied the day before, the surface was already quite glossy, and the water did help but just a bit. I could manage without it on some parts. I used a dark brown instead of black to avoid a huge jump in color which would create a lot of noise. And this reasoning also applied in the next step where I edge highlighted the panels. I went back to my light red, added a drop of water, and after working the paint up to the halfway mark of my brush, twisted as I discharged the excess paint to preserve a good tip. I then dragged the side of the brush along the edge for an easy crispy highlight. I am not going along the edge, but placing my brush against it. Before, while stippling, the diluted coats of red never got to the point of achieving full opacity. So now I can use the same color with its full value to create highlights which do not jump up too much to the point of being ridiculous. Remember, you don't have to highlight everything, going for the upper facing edges alone is good enough. On smaller edges, closer to the panels, I use the same technique but working with the tip of the brush only. This is not as easy as with the big panels, but still is the best way to do it. With the shadows and edges well defined, I was extremely pleased with the result. Only thing left was to paint the rest of the details with the usual base coat followed by a wash and some highlights, which in the end left me with this. If you reached this point, thank you for watching the whole video, and I hope you learned 1 or 2 new things from it. If you'd like to see me paint something else, I'm always open for suggestions in the comments.